Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm George Nguyen, editor at Search Engine Land, and today we're here to discuss with two of our search marketers of the years. It's kind of hard to say that. It's a title we award to the marketers that have made a tangible difference in their organizations, for their clients, and of course in the community at large. I'll be introducing them in just a second, but first, I'd like to thank our sponsor, our award sponsor, Microsoft, for helping us recognize the work that they've done. So thank you. Now, of course, I'd like to introduce to you first Lisa Little. Lisa, would you like to say hi?
Hi.
She is a Search Center of Excellence. That is her job title. My title is just editor, so it's definitely not as grandiose. Search Center of Excellence at Goodway Group, and in a bit over 2 years with Goodway Group, you're credited with doubling your organization's search team size to 22 members and growing managed spend by 73%. Of course, those are very impressive metrics, but you've also led those 22 members through an organizational restructure, which kind of just makes my jaw clench. Anytime you hear that, you get nervous, right? But you retained 100% of them. That's all part of it. And as Search Center of Excellence, you created corporate training and development programs to disseminate best practices amongst your clients, really leading the way there. And we're going to be talking about all of that. But I also want to introduce, of course, another search marketer of the year, Mike King, who is who's a founder and managing director of iPullRank. Mike, you've been in SEO since 2006, which is making an OG.
Yeah. For a long time.
Yeah. We're going to get into all that. I graduated high school in 2005. To date myself. During that time,
through the heart.
You worked at a few agencies, established your own, of course, written for numerous industry publications, including ours, Search Engine Land. You've also spoken at ours. And, he was telling me this a little bit earlier, and it's a blatant plug, but I think it's such a sweet story. Why is SMX special to you, Mike?
Yeah, I met my partner, my girlfriend, of 9 years at SMX East, which was also the first talk that I ever gave.
Don't go to SMX for that reason. It's not going to happen to you. But I just thought that was so great. Wanted to share. You've also contributed to Rand Fishkin and Thomas Hogenhaven's book, Inbound Marketing and SEO. I understand you're working on your own book, The Science of SEO. You got a release date on that, or is it under wraps? You're not supposed to talk about it?
So release date is tentatively January 2022.
Okay, so it's coming. It's in the works.
Yeah.
2022 seems like a long way away, especially with how this year has gone. Okay, now let's dive into things. Lisa, I want to return to your title here, Search Center of Excellence. Could you tell us a bit about that role?
Sure. When we did the reorg and the restructure that you were referencing, it was about 1.5 years ago. We developed a Center of Excellence team, and we have representation of each core function that we offer at Goodway. So my role is really just supporting Goodway by making commitments to quality, exceptional standards, thought leadership in all things search. And then I also establish a roadmap of our capabilities, partnerships, the workflow to really drive that excellence and performance for our clients through every stage of the client lifecycle. I think most importantly, it's also guiding learning around those skills that are needed and fundamentals and just how we approach and the behaviors that are needed in search to be successful.
Right. And of course, to be the Search Center of Excellence, from what I can tell, there seems to be a huge emphasis in your role on continuing education. How has that helped you and your team succeed?
Totally. I mean, I see it, as continual learning. It's super crucial. As y'all know, our world changes constantly. I think I learn something new every single day, and that learning culture is just so important. In this time that we need to pivot and just be extremely agile. So, even the most experienced people or seasoned vets haven't experienced what we're going through now. So that learning culture it's really crucial. We kind of look at it as building a learning resume or like an experience arsenal that we can just dip into for future situations.
All right. So with regard to developing yourself, Mike, it's been over a decade for you in the industry. Now, you've gotten to see a lot of those things, those developments that we're like, oh, this is just a best practice. This is how you do it. This is something that you should consider. Was it an active process for you to get to where you are in terms of your knowledge base, or were you constantly thinking about like, oh, I really need to check up on what the new articles are, I need to stay on top of it, or did you just kind of keep doing it and things developed and you just couldn't ignore them? How did that work?
Yeah, I think part of it was just like that, like Lisa's saying, just like looking to have more of that education that you can share with people and so on. So I was reading everything and, testing everything and just trying to learn. And then being so involved in the thought leadership space, it was kind of like a competition to some degree to like be the one with the next best idea. And so, to some degree, I was kind of like contributing to that as well. So especially around things like JavaScript SEO, because of the intersection that I live at of engineering and marketing, it was a really good opportunity for me to showcase the things that I can do very well and come up with a lot of those opportunities. So, throughout the course of my career, it's really been about like, how can I learn stuff and share it because I'm so excited about what it is that we do.
That's something that I think a lot of people don't get about SEO when you talk about it with people outside the field, is how exciting you feel something is. And then, of course, it just kind of was like, wait, what does that mean for the end user? It doesn't always mean something for the end user. But of course, I'm preaching to the choir. Everybody watching this is probably going to know that. But you touched on your technical background, Mike. And as somebody myself who comes from a content marketing background, that seems, quite frankly, quite intimidating. But I do want to enrich myself. I want to be able to participate in the conversation. The trend here, especially with news nowadays and the emphasis on like the upcoming, let's say, page experience update coming in 2021, where you have to deal with things like core web vitals and everything just seems a little bit more technical. That's the trend. People are aspiring to do that. So where would you say that they should start if they don't really have a base there?
Yeah, and I've actually kind of called that trend out back in 2016. I wrote this blog post called The Technical SEO Renaissance, talking about how, everyone was shifting more towards being the content marketer because of things like Panda and Penguin and so on. But there has been a need for that technical aspect, and it's only going to get bigger because of the fact that technologies have ramped up pretty dramatically over the last few years. And so my thinking on that isn't that we need to have everybody learn how to code. It's really that people just need to understand the context within that they work, right? So like, learn about these technologies, learn about what the implications of things like JavaScript and core web vitals and page experience more broadly mean, so that you can have the right conversations with the right people. So as an example, page experience is largely about speed stuff, and you as a content marketer, you're not going to go in and start making adjustments with respect to the critical rendering path and core web vitals, but you can help your team establish this idea of a performance budget. And so you can say like, hey, if we're going to introduce this new feature, it has to load within 0.2 seconds and things like that. So you can be more like a product manager, or you can contribute to those product management discussions if you understand these things from a high level. So again, it's not about coding, it's just about like reading up on what these things mean and how they might impact you, so you can have a more educated discussion around them.
I like that. It feels like training wheels for me, and I like training wheels. I do want to ask Lisa a question, but before we move off that topic, I was wondering if, Lisa, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think, my specialty is more on the paid search side. And so although I understand SEO and keep up to date with it, much like Mike was saying, I kind of view it as like the SERP is like a playground. There's lots of different aspects of SEO versus SEM versus e-com, local, all the different things that can show up there. And so it's important to just understand the environment and how they all work together and complement each other for that SERP experience.
Awesome. So one of the initiatives, Lisa, that you become known for is providing clients with training and education. Working with clients myself back in the day, that's not always an easy thing to do, because sometimes they feel like, well, that's why I hire you, so I don't really have to take care of this. Could you describe that? What did you try to cover in these trainings?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I view it as like translating search into concepts that clients can understand, because then it becomes more meaningful to really drive business instead of focusing on the wrong things or getting trapped in what I like to call the like search quicksand. So some of these sessions would cover things like best practices or fundamental concepts, but I really try to make it fun through either analogies or examples to make it that like experiential learning so that it sticks. I kind of think of like Mythbusters or How It's Made or even Curious George. I have a little 3-year-old, so that's my life right now. But
I love Curious George.
I did too.
I didn't like it so much at the time in elementary school.
Because you're George.
But
yeah.
Now I'm like, I really need to get one of those plushies and the guy with the yellow hat.
But I agree. I mean, I think it's about the experience and what you're learning, and how you can apply it to your own business and why it matters, so it's not as much a training that you have to sit through and you're magically going to understand everything, but it's more about talking through the experience and understanding search overall.
Okay, so that's going to I'm going to use that as a segue here and talk about when we speak, and speaking has become much more common. I feel like with digital conferences, people are getting footholds when they other factors like maybe travel would have prevented them from speaking. Now you can just do it from the comfort of your own office, which is where I assume we all are right now. But let's assume that day comes when we're back on stage, or even for people at home. Mike, you're really known for being a speaker. How do you build comfort on stage? How do you go from being somebody who just aspires to contribute to the community to actually doing it in a way where you get in front of people? I mean, it's nerve-wracking, right?
I cheated. I used to rap for a living. So, it's very similar. Jumping on stage and I think what it really comes down to is being prepared and comfortable, right? Like I always tell people, like, wear your favorite shoes, wear the outfit that makes you feel confident, like do those things, because you wouldn't have been asked to speak if people didn't think you knew what you were talking about. And when I first started speaking, I was always scared that someone in the audience would ask me a question and like it would be revealed that I don't know anything. But the reality was I always knew a lot. And you probably, if you're someone again who's being asked to speak, you probably know more than most people. So really just being confident in what it is that you know, and being prepared is all it is, and doing what it takes to make yourself feel confident.
Lisa, have you spoken on stage?
Not externally on stage, but I've done a lot of presenting internally to larger groups and to peers and that sort of thing in the industry. I think I totally agree. I used to be a dancer and in theater and that kind of stuff, and it really helps prepare you for feeling comfortable in those situations. But I think it is totally about the comfort level and being genuine. That really comes across when you're speaking about something. If you're passionate about it and you're genuine about it, it really comes across.
That's all I got. That last part there is all I got, because I don't come from a performative background like you two. I was a radio professional before I was a journalist. And so I had the luxury of never having to acknowledge anyone's face when I said something. I cannot get away with that nowadays.
I saw you were a teacher too, weren't you?
I was a teacher, but it's so much easier, but also more difficult in ways to entertain children. You get that direct feedback immediately from your peers. Not so much, and it just feels like there's more on the line from children. There's leeway, but
I feel like kids are harder because, like you said, they will give you feedback in real time. Like, this is terrible. Whereas, like, people that are more, older and ingrained with society, they know not to tell you things are terrible.
I wish the kids knew, but I do miss the kids. But I love the career now. And I love being here with you. One of the reasons we're here, not doing this face-to-face, is, of course, the pandemic. And Lisa, I understand that the pandemic was a turning point in terms of your responsibilities. What changed exactly and why?
Yeah, I mean, I think before the pandemic really hit, I was still in this new, center of excellence role. I was focused on those best practices and like operational excellence. But with the pandemic, it wasn't really shifting away from that as much as it was adding other focus areas like industry trends, and capabilities and just confidence and knowledge and training about search. I think the pandemic has just rocked all of our worlds, and really put acceleration on a lot of concepts in search marketing. And so just that, ability to pivot and embrace that, gift of embracing change, was what really changed for me and just accelerated everything.
Any pandemic experiences you'd like to share, Mike?
I agree with Lisa, but I think that in the search space, we're so conditioned to react to change anyway. So it was just another one. Like it was like a big algorithm change, basically. So it was more like operational things to react to, obviously, than what's going on in the SERPs. But because everyone is so used to having to shift things around, it wasn't as hard as it might have been in more like entrenched industries.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, for me, like I was already Goodway's virtual has been for a long time. So we were already virtual. And like you said, we are conditioned to change and feel comfortable with it. And so it didn't really impact me as much, but I really saw it as an opportunity to support and help other people that this isn't normal for them. We very quickly, because we had that experience virtually, we very quickly put out support and opportunities about how to work remotely and how to make it work. So I think that was really cool for me to be able to help others through this.
Yeah, in the same way, we also, we did this big study about marketing in the age of COVID-19. It wasn't just like go after these keywords. It was like a big market research study, because it was just a good way for us to like kind of channel our collective anxiety and like, what do we do? Okay, let's figure it out. Now let's share it with the world.
Let's talk a little bit about contributing in your own agency for a second, Lisa. I understand you run an industry panel. Who is that for?
Yeah, it's internal for Goodway. It is really just alongside, our president and VP of Enterprise Partnerships. We curate articles. We share our point of view around it. We talk through what's going on, why is it important, what's the impact, and then we share out additional links if people want to follow up and dig deeper on their own. I think I've been reading and curating and keeping up to date with the industry for over a decade now. And so I love doing that kind of stuff. And then, trying to narrow it down and give it to share that knowledge with other people and kind of help prioritize those articles. There's so much going on, but trying to prioritize it to what really matters for our clients and for our business. But it is an internal, weekly thing that we offer to our employees at Goodway.
Right. And so the people who are dropping in on this, are they already really steeped in SEO? They know the importance of it, or is that something that you've built up for them through this?
Yeah, it's bigger than just search, because it is for our whole company. It's all digital. It's all marketing. It's all of the legal stuff and policy and all of that that's going on too. And it's really interesting because there's a huge range of knowledge and awareness about what you're talking about. So I find myself catching myself before I really go into using acronyms or industry jargon, and try to define that, because there is such a wide range of knowledge that participates and joins that.
And that has helped you really cement the value of search within your organization?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think we have a pretty good search group that are extreme experts, but then everyone, else, whether it's a client services or a salesperson or somebody in, data science and tech, they don't always know search. So it's helping others grow in search at the same time.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's so valuable. So valuable because, like you said, there's just such a huge throughput of new stuff coming every week. You've definitely got to have someone like you who's like, all right, here's what's most important for what we're trying to do. We do something similar internally as part of like our weekly status meeting. We'll go through and be like, all right, here are the things that everybody must read and must know so that we're all on point and we can have responses for clients and like be more proactive to those needs. So yeah, super valuable.
So with regards to your contributions to, it's your contributions exceed just the search industry, Mike, as you are also a founding member of Black and Brilliant, a tech and digital media group for BIPOC advocacy here. And that's just seems to be a recurring thing. You've already talked about why you contribute, but it seems like we're just scratching the surface there. Is there like some people just are hanging out like a lot? I would say a lot of our attendees don't live and breathe SEO, but they want to advance their careers, right? Which is why they attend these conferences. But then there's those of us who are just like, check out this screenshot. What is this? Let's talk about it, right? And so where does that drive come from? And just why, I guess, in short?
Well, actually,
Yeah, I'm just a super curious person and also just like really interested in, like I said before, sharing, right? Like when I discover something, I'm like, yo, everybody needs to know this because this is crazy, right? Like, and it kind of just goes back to, again, like the similarities between being a marketer and being a performer. I kind of look at my blog posts like when I used to put out songs, which I still do, just not as much. And it's like, all right, this is like a song that I'm super excited for people to, experience. And so when I discover something, I'm just like, yo, I just want other people to see this as well. And there's value in a variety of ways. Like there's value with respect to, someone will come to me and say like, hey, I read something you wrote and we implemented it and it got me a promotion and things like that. Like I love that stuff. But to the point of the Black and Brilliant stuff, that's a whole nother level, right? Because, I have a position of privilege based on what I've been able to accomplish in my career and life in general. And so I want to have the opportunities to give back to underrepresented groups. And so when my previous manager from another company, a gentleman named Tony Effick, kicked off this Black and Brilliant initiative, I was like, oh yeah, let me get all over this and be involved and help with building out, the infrastructure for everything that we're doing from a technical perspective. And also one of the things that I'm incredibly passionate about is this idea that artificial intelligence is going to reinforce a lot of biases that we have in the world. And so this group is allowing me to be very involved in that type of stuff, in that discussion and building out, white papers and thought leadership around how that can be conquered. So these are all just like a reflection of who I am as a person, just like wanting to help and being super curious and wanting to share the things that I learned.
Awesome. I'm sure you do some of that through your own agency. We're going to touch on that in a second. But first, I'm going to ask Lisa, since you've played such a big role in growing Goodway Group, what do you look for when hiring a new member? It's an interesting question because you're Search Marketer of the Year. So I'm asking you, what do you look for?
Yeah, so we are hiring. We do have lots of positions open. First, I'll just start there. We really look at the people and how they behave, how they show up, how much they're willing to embrace change and pivot and be curious and absorb that. We definitely look for certain search skills and skill levels and experience more technically for the jobs at hand. But I would say it's largely the person and the unmeasurable and, a little bit less tangible skills and soft skills that are harder to teach, and harder to create. So we really look for those, curious minds that are passionate and want to just continually learn.
Right. That's something I've come across myself in speaking to professionals, is that everybody seems to really prize curiosity. And I would say that that is, a base level thing for this field. I feel like it's kind of a cliche, but it's true, a sense of like, you have to solve this puzzle, or how can you approach it differently than someone else might. Mike, of course, you're Search Marketer of the Year as well, but also you run an agency. So what
I
are
try.
the qualities that would suggest a professional has what it takes to achieve SEO greatness?
Yeah, it's actually kind of strange to determine. I agree with everything that Lisa just said, but this is a space where experience does not inherently make you better than someone else, because things change so much. And if you're so entrenched in your way of doing things, that you may stop yourself from performing as well as you can. So I don't necessarily look for people that have like MBAs or even a degree, or if they've had 10 years of experience. That does not make me inherently assume this person will be a stronger contributor. So what I look for on top of the curiosity is like, what have you done and how did you do it? Right. And so like, show me the results that you got in the past. Show me how you found a new insight and use that as an advantage to do what you achieved. Because there are a lot of people that can paint by numbers and they can sound good and sound polished, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be good at digital anything 6 months from now.
Absolutely. Now let's go to something. I'm sorry, Lisa, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to add, I think being extremely resourceful, knowing how to use your resources and leaning on them and then sharing them with others. I also think time management is super important. There's so much going on, especially if you're working in an agency, like knowing how to manage that time for what's the most impactful. And then I think for search, it's really important that you're attentive, like a little bit of a tinkerer, that you'll check in and tweak something or optimize or revise and then check back in to see what that did and continually kind of tinker with it or refine it. So
experimentation, of course.
Yeah.
Now we're heading up on time. There is one big question I want to ask you, sort of just, is there any other advice that you would definitely want viewers to know about? And I'm going to give you a second to marinate on that, both of you. However, Mike's second to marinate on it is going to be a little bit different, because your Twitter bio, this is just kind of been puzzling me since I followed you. I don't remember when, but it says recovering big agency guy. So I want to ask you what that means. Well, Lisa has the luxury of thinking through this question.
I think I know what it means too, but I want to hear.
I think I know, but we don't want to make assumptions here.
I mean, you can make all the assumptions you want. Working at a big agency is terrible. And, like my experience of that was being someone who is very much a connector. And also the same time that I was working in big agencies was the same time that like I had gotten a thought leadership, and all these people are like, wow, these ideas are great. And we want to, use them differently across the industry. Whereas I'm sitting at an ad agency where nobody cares at all about what I do. So it was definitely one of those experiences that can make you really jaded. And, I'm just actively trying to not be jaded by that.
I certainly feel like bureaucracy kills creativity sometimes.
Yeah.
I used those big agency moments, and I tried to like take the frustration of it, people not knowing what I was talking about or caring what I was caring about. But I try to kind of reposition that into translating. Like that's one of my big advice is like become a translator, figure out how to talk about something that might be a complex concept into something that people understand, and just knowing those cues and picking up on those, and then being prepared for conversations, with a different hat. Because if you are talking to a CMO or a media planner or a merchant, like those are all very different conversations. So I think catering that communication and translating it is always really helpful to get people passionate about what you're passionate about.
Okay. Now, is that your hot tip, your pro tip that you were thinking about, or is that just something that came along as Mike was?
That's one of them. One of them. But I think, for me, one of the biggest tips that I would say is build lasting relationships. when you are in this industry for a while, like you never know when your client is going to become your vendor, is going to become your peer or your manager. Mike and I even have some common networking contacts, and it's like this industry is like 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon. I mean, so you just have to really really build those relationships in a meaningful way, and try to draw out from people everything that you can, and then try to contribute as much as you can to those relationships as well.
Yeah, it goes across the board in any industry, but especially in SEO, I feel like everyone really does know everyone to some extent. What about you, Mike?
I agree wholeheartedly with Lisa, but I also think that you should never stop learning. You should never stop trying to put together things that don't go together. And what I mean by that is, a lot of the things that I've discovered in my career and shared was because someone was like, no, you can't do these two things together. And I was like, well, let's see. And so, that's where a lot of those discoveries come from. So you can't just, paint by numbers. You can't just do what's the best practice and accept it. You just got to keep trying things until you see what actually works.
I've noticed that search professionals, amongst many successful search professionals, not all, of course, have an element of being contrarian about them. Not antagonistic, but being contrarian is a running theme here. Okay.
That's definitely me.
That is all the time we have. Thank you so much, Lisa and Mike. First, I'm going to ask Lisa, how can people get in touch with you if they want to ask you more about your path?
Sure. I'm on LinkedIn, Lisa Little. Goodway is goodwaygroup.com is our website. And my email is llittle@goodwaygroup.com.
And Mike?
Smoke signals, carrier pigeons. I pull rank on all the social channels. We're ipullrank.com. You can email me, mike@ipullrank.com.
Fantastic. And thank you, the viewers, very much for joining us. We hope you enjoy the rest of SMX.